Now, over a year ago, I made a video explaining all of the issues I have with CGI, and I would recommend you go and watch that video first, as this one will probably make more sense to you if you do, and you can find a link to it in the description below. But to quickly go over something I discussed at length in that video, one of the many problems that can come with CGI is that the animators sometimes try to caricature something in a style that is inherently made to look realistic, thus causing it to look unintentionally creepy and evoke the uncanny valley. However, there is one movie, as well as the TV show that came after it, that didn't have this side effect. And that's Jimmy Neutron, Boy Genius. And today, I'd like to explain why that movie and TV show is one of the very few uses of caricatured CGI that actually works and didn't make the characters come across as creepy. Okay, so to get right into it, Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius was a 2001 movie about a group of kids who have to save their parents that have been abducted by aliens. Now, when the movie became a rather big success, it spawned a TV spin-off that aired on Nickelodeon for a few years that also proved pretty popular. But the only thing that's relevant to this video is that the TV show retained almost exactly the same style of CGI that it had for the movie, which for reasons I'll get to in a second proved to be a very good thing. Alright, so to finally get to my point, if you take just one look at the character models of either the movie or TV show, anybody could tell that they're extremely caricatured or exaggerated from real life. And yet, they don't look scary in the slightest. Jimmy's dad, Hugh, has an extremely unnaturally large head, and his nose sticks out way too far, but it evokes no negative reaction from the mind. Carl is basically just a round ball with limbs and a head, and there's nothing creepy about him either. And even Jimmy's teacher, Miss Fowl, who the characters treat as pretty repulsive at times, doesn't look like anything the audience should fear. Okay, in case I'm not being clear enough, my point here is that none of these characters have an unintentionally creepy or scary vibe to them, and don't appear to evoke the uncanny valley at all. And this might seem weird when you consider that almost every other time characters are caricatured like that in CGI, people always start complaining about how creepy and scary they look. For just one example of that, take the recent Rugrats reboot, where many have said that the animation models look like something right out of a nightmare. So the obvious question to then ask is, why is that? Why does Jimmy Neutron not evoke the uncanny valley? And the answer for that actually lies in something rather simple. The CGI itself. You see, the uncanny valley is usually evoked when something looks extremely realistic, but at the same time not quite realistic enough, thus causing a subconscious fear of it because you can sense that there's something just not right about it. That's why, say, the lions in the original Lion King are so visually appealing, because they aren't meant to be realistic and instead are drawn in an extremely artistic style. So when they do things that a normal lion can't do, it doesn't matter, because it fits the style it's drawn in. But in the CGI remake, they might just scare the heck out of you, because they look just like real lions, but their subtle, unnatural movements and the fact that they're talking makes them fall right into the uncanny valley. Because they look exactly like normal lions, but are doing things that no lion would actually do. And thus your subconscious is telling you to be afraid of these things that it has no idea what to make of. But to get back to Jimmy Neutron, what kept it from evoking this effect was the very primitive CGI. I mean, many have gone back years after watching the show as kids and said, I can't believe how bad the CGI was. And that's exactly what saved it from scaring them. Because look at this. Anybody, even a little kid, can tell that this setting is not real, or at least not in the real world. The CGI is way too crude to evoke the realistic effect that it usually does. And the result is that the caricatured designs of the characters can be used without unintentionally scaring the audience. In other words, the bad CGI ended up having the same effect that 2D animation always had on its characters. That because nothing about it looks realistic to begin with, the exaggeration ends up looking better than the real thing rather than unintentionally creepy. And this is even more evident when the characters crossed over with the Fairly Odd Parents, a traditionally animated cartoon. The CGI characters don't look out of place in 2D, and the 2D characters don't look scary in CGI. And I can assure you right now, if it weren't for the very low-grade CGI, that would not have been the case at all. Just compare that with the animation of the Rugrats reboot. Because the CGI is much more polished and to a degree realistic, it makes the characters look insanely creepy. They almost look like extremely weird dolls that have come to life and are walking around. And you're supposed to find them cute? As I've said before, this is something that absolutely nobody in the animation industry seems to be learning about CGI. Because taking an animation style that evokes realism and combining it with visual exaggeration, or in other words, things that cannot actually exist in the real world, will never end with the characters looking good. Unless the CGI is just so crude that you could never possibly view them as realistic, which is exactly what happened with Jimmy Neutron. Because even when you look at CGI movies that go with a more unrealistic style, such as certain Disney movies and most Pixar movies, even then you'll notice that they try to keep the characters looking as close to real people as possible with very limited exaggeration. And this is simply because good CGI can not make exaggeration work and not evoke the uncanny valley. CGI thrives on realism, and 2D animation thrives on caricature. That's it. End of story. And if the people in Hollywood would just finally accept this, then maybe we would finally stop getting creeped out by all the times they desperately attempt to prove that it can work in CGI. Because as Jimmy Neutron proved, the only way it does work is when the CGI is bad. And I think both the animators and audience can agree. If that's really the case, then what would be the point? Sure, it made sense in the early 2000s when the CGI was still very primitive, but these days, if they really want to make something that's heavy on exaggeration, they should really be doing it in 2D animation. CGI can't do everything, and one of those things is making caricatures look good. Jimmy Neutron was only one minor exception, and a rather lucky one at that. Okay, that's about all I've got. So now I want you to tell me, do you believe that the only reason Jimmy Neutron worked is because of its extremely crude CGI? Or do you believe CGI is better at exaggerating characters than I'm giving it credit for? Please feel free to tell me in the comments. And remember, it's okay if you disagree with me and think I'm dead wrong. I understand we all have our varying opinions on CGI, and I'm willing to respect yours if you'll respect mine. And thank you all for watching. I really appreciate it, and I hope to see you all next time.